The majority of people in this country are white. And the majority of people in this country who are poor are white. The majority of people who are on welfare are white. The majority of people living in poverty are white. And yet they vote against their interests because somehow some black person or some Mexican is going to get a handout with my taxpayer dollar, not on my watch. So I'm going to vote against my interests, even though this $500 could make a difference because most Americans don't have $400 saved. This to me is fundamental. So tell me, Mayor, and I'm going to keep calling you Mayor, maybe Senator. You need to keep doing this because you and your wife are public servants, and I love that you guys roll up your sleeves and you work. Michael Tubbs, tell me why your city voted against you.
Well, I think you mentioned it. We know in that 2021, 2017, racism still exists. I was the first Black mayor in the history of Stockton, not because I was the first Black person born in Stockton, but because over the 200 plus years of the city, no Black mayor was elected. And that doesn't mean that I was so special and smarter than every other Black person in Stockton, but it speaks to bias. And there was a 4-year disinformation campaign. So while we were giving scholarships to people and basic income and leaving with a budget surplus and reducing homicides by 40%, there's a social media site every day feeding garbage, telling people that I was stealing money, that I was corrupt, that I was lazy, that I didn't work. And unfortunately, we know, and we saw yesterday with the Oprah interview, that racism and misinformation works, especially if the misinformation feeds into the thoughts we have about Black people. So for some folks in the city, it was easier to believe that the 27-year-old Black mayor was stealing money than the fact the 27-year-old Black man was bringing money into the city. And we just didn't do a good enough job of spending all of our time on Facebook confronting these negative images and stereotypes. So it's very unfortunate, but learned a lot from the experience.
Well, it sounds like you didn't spend much time on that because you're busy governing, which, no one can fault you for. But I want to go back to the test itself. It's almost counterintuitive to people who haven't been in this situation to know that if you have a basic income, it could take out all of these other stresses in your life and make it easier for you to seek full-time employment. But could you give us more perspective on how this experiment led to people getting more full-time jobs?
Yeah, and actually your question just gave me more clarity because it's called basic income, not only income, right? So it's not going to replace your ability to work. It's just a basic, a floor for you. And essentially we know that if you work part-time, for example, you don't have paid time off. So you may be qualified for a better job. You may want to interview for a better job, but to do so means you have to take unpaid time off work, which is tantamount to losing money, and there's no guarantee you'll get the job you apply for. If your bills are due every week, you can't take that risk, even if it's 2 hours or 3 hours, or if you're living paycheck to paycheck, you may not have the money to buy clothes for the interview. Your car may have some problems. You may have a transmission problem. You may not have reliable transportation, so you have to take irregular hours. You may not be able to afford regular childcare, so you have to work odd jobs here and there. And I think what I learned the most from this pilot has been just how many people are piecemealing together in that they don't have ownership of their time because they don't have cash. And cash does rule everything around us, and it provides agency, like the ability to plan your schedule, the ability to know when to leave and when to go, and the ability to bet on yourself. And I know for a lot of people, they're like, how did that happen? Then when they hear about, oh yeah, that does make sense. Well, if I'm working minimum wage, I can't afford to miss a day, because if I don't get this job, then I'm even further behind.
This propaganda against it, as you're talking, Michael Tubbs, I'm thinking about even the monarchy, how if we continue to push these negative images, then who wins? Well, the person, the institute or the firm or the space that needs bondage, that needs people to be in bondage, right? So if I need a whole group of people to be in bondage so that I can sit on this throne, then I'm going to have to denigrate anything that might give these people hope to get up. And I even think about it from my standpoint. I made a commitment when I started this radio show that I was going to replace my salary, right, at Hunter. I was going to figure out so I could do this show free. Not that I was leaving, but to have the freedom to say, I don't have to teach. I don't have to go into this job, because it makes you move differently if you have to do something versus, and then that freedom of doing something, not needing it, put you on a whole up, and then the universe conspires to make you successful because you're coming in with the energy that I don't have to do this. I'm doing it because I want to. And when that flipped a few years ago, it was off to the races, because now it's like, yes, I can do this. Now I'm like, let me replace this. Because I never want you to tell me how to be great in a space that's actually helping you, which is another psychological thing that we have to get through. But so now that you've left, is the pilot project not going to be continued? Like, what happens next?
Yeah, so the idea was the pilot project was going to end anyway. And we actually were able to extend it thanks to a good friend, Carol Tolan, until February of this year, because we saw what COVID was doing to folks. And now we're just taking these pilots and having a real conversation about how do we get to policy. So we have 42 mayors now signed up to do similar things in their community through a group I founded called Mayors for a Guaranteed Income. I've been having conversations with the White House and senators and other folks about what a guaranteed income pilot will look like. And we'll continue pushing, because I think, to the point, you said it best, is this notion of agency. When you own your time, when you have the ability to make decisions, you make the best decisions for yourself and your family, and you're ultimately productive and creative. So, and what's interesting to me is the richest people I know, they all own their time. They don't have to do nothing. They wake up, to your point, every day, and they decide what they want to read, what the email they want to respond to, what calls they want to make, and they move differently. And something as small as $500 gives everyone at least a little bit of that ability to say, you know what, this is what I want to do. This is how I want to contribute. This is how I want to spend my time. And I think that's just so important.
How did you get people to buy into the pilot program, and what made you start this in the first place? Like, what was the impetus for it?
Yeah, I grew up in poverty. My mom was single. She had me as a teenager. So my whole life, I would hear these things about people who struggled. And I was just like, I don't know anyone, literally anybody like that. And I grew up, I'm like, this is my neighborhood. This is my family. This is dinner. And I always have been bothered by that. And then when I became mayor, I realized that the biggest issue in Stockton wasn't just crime. It wasn't homelessness. It wasn't low educational attainment. It was poverty, and how many folks were economically insecure in the city. So I told my team, I would always tell them, we're in office to do something, not to be something. So we're not going to be here and be scared. We're not going to be here and not try things, particularly if it's about making the status quo better. And because of that, we decided that testing a guaranteed income would be a good use of the platform, good use of the opportunity. And I would always tell my team in meetings, because they would get nervous sometimes, I would say, well, we're different. Like, we're the first, we're the youngest. Like, government should look different. Government should do something different. Like, it can't just be the same. Then what's the point of us being here, right? And I mean, and we took some hits for it, but I'm glad we did, because now we went from one crazy mayor in one city to 42 mayors across this country saying, we're going to do a guaranteed income too. And I think the timing is perfect as well.
That is powerful.
30 years old. He'll be 31 August 2nd. We're talking with Michael D. Tubbs. Where can we get the list of 42 mayors so that we can support them? I want to keep inviting them, because, you know, the purpose of having this platform is to not just inform, but to inspire, you know, and to set records straight. Like, let's celebrate these 42 that have picked up your baton and they're running with it now. And wherever they are, I'm sure someone listening is living in those cities. Where can we find them?
Yeah, you could go for mayorsforagi.org, mayorsforagi.org, or at mayorsforagi on Twitter. But it's like the who's who of mayors. You have Mayor Keisha Bottoms in Atlanta, Mayor Melvin Carter in St. Paul, Mayor Garcetti in Los Angeles, Mayor Brown in Compton, the Mayor of Philadelphia, the Mayor of Pittsburgh, the Mayor of Houston, the Mayor of Tallahassee, Florida, the Mayor of Wausau, Wisconsin, the Mayor of Madison, Wisconsin, the Mayor of Long Beach. I think it's the all-star group of mayors. It's all the mayors I want to ride with on anything. And they're all saying, you know what, we're going to try to do a guaranteed income.